Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with Exemplify Health Center, an affiliate of the Wellness Way. Happy Monday evening, guys. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I had a great weekend of resting and recovering and relaxing. It was the first time I've been home in I think 4 weekends. So I had a chance to actually sleep my required 8 to 9 hours for the first time in a very, very long time. If you guys are watching me right now, guys, make sure that you please say hello. I don't ask for much, but I do ask that you just please say hello. And you also let me know where you're watching from. I know somebody watching from Singapore. We have people watching on Instagram right now from Indonesia, from Canada. I think we're representing all of the major continents, except for Antarctica, obviously. Guys, for today, I'm going to go over with you part 2 of fasting. If you didn't have a chance to watch part 1, you can always go back and watch that. That will be not only on Facebook, but it'll also be on YouTube. It'll also be on Rumble as well. So just in case it gets pulled down from YouTube, which you never know, it's also on the Rumble platform, which is an awesome platform. So you can go back and watch those things. There's certain videos, guys, that you can't see on YouTube. People will ask me, they'll go back and say, hey, remember that you did that video that had 1 million views within 4 days? I said, yes, I remember that video very well. I said, well, I can't find it on YouTube. And I said, because YouTube pulled that down. You can go on Rumble and you can find that as the very first video that we put on Rumble, only because we thought we were going to be taken down permanently off of YouTube. So if you guys are watching again, please say hello. Another guy with people from Arizona, from Montana, Singapore, I always said, Michigan, California, Ohio, Northern Ireland, Uruguay. Guys, this is really awesome. Thank you so much for responding. And I'm humbled, as always, that when you want to watch. So we're going to talk about, again, fasting part 2. So let's guys get into it. Okay. So the first part of fasting, one of the things I went over was, this is what fasting means. You have intermittent fasting, everybody I think sometimes they make it out to be more complicated than what it should be, only for they can make it their specialty and make it a lot more complex to maybe confuse you so that you can pay them to teach you how to fast. I don't know. But you have intermittent fasting, you get 5-2 fasting, alternate day fasting. They make it into so many different variations of doing it. And remember I said on the first one, go back and watch it, that really intermittent fasting is not considered true fasting, only because if you are, eating, let's say, and fasting for 18 hours, then guys, I'm going to tell you one of the first things is that you're not truly fasting, because your transit time in your gastrointestinal system is really about anywhere from 24 to 36 hours. Anyway, you're still extracting nutrients, even after 18 hours. So we wouldn't really consider true fasting. True fasting would actually, would be anything that would be considered over 24 hours. And so what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about extended fasting. We're talking about 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Okay. So biggest thing is anything over, like, we're going to say 3 days. And honestly, can you go 2 days? Yes, you can do 2 days. You can do 24 hours. You can do 6 days, 8 days. But one of the things I didn't say in the first video is extended fast. And we're talking about anything over 24 hours. Who should do it? And so go back, because a lot of people say, can I fast? And I'm going to give you some generalities with some kind of rules and explain to you why. Men, yes, men can fast. The reason why is because the short-term stressor won't affect their hormones. We're just basically testosterone that's not dependent as much on adrenal function. Actually, a short-term stressor can be good for men. Men, your hormones should stay consistent throughout your whole life. They don't go through a menopause. Anybody tells you that there's such thing as a menopause, it actually means that your man, if he claims to be going through a menopause, is actually sick. So they're built to have relatively stable testosterone levels throughout their whole life. They should be able to produce all the way until the day they die. So can men do it? Yes, they should. Actually, we recommend that they do it every 3 months of doing an extended fast, 3 or 5 days. Who else can fast? Postmenopausal women. Okay. The reason why is hormones are primarily coming from the adrenal glands. And as long as they're adrenally healthy, they should have no problems with doing any kind of extended fast. Also, when you talk about insulin resistance, especially when someone is of the time that they're cyclic, you can make an exception if they have PCOS, largely because insulin or fasting is actually good for insulin resistance. And then also, really any age, if someone has a peptic ulcer, then fasting is actually good 2 or 3 days. And the reason why is you're just really allowing for some healing to occur in the stomach. It turns over pretty quickly. And so doing a water only fast with some aloe juice can help calm down uh, the stomach lining and help that to heal by not pouring acid on something that is very very sensitive. That's why it hurts so much. So it gives us some time in order to be able to heal. So a lot of times, yeah, you're going to break some rules of hormones with the intention of, well, we're going to break some rules in order to bring some healing so that we can help continue to move forward, because no one's going to move forward if they have a chronic gastric ulcer. So we want to bring some healing to that, especially. So who should do it? Men, yes. Postmenopausal women, yes, if they're adrenally healthy. Are they cyclic? Yes, if they PCOS and then having a peptic ulcer. Okay. So let's go into then what happens during this fast. Let's make sure that I didn't skip over. Um, yes. Okay. So here's what happens, and let's talk about fasting if you are going to be doing a 5-day fast. And I'll actually go over with you as well what how you feel, but then also how you do it if you were to be able to do it. Okay. So let me check my sound here. All right. So an extended fast is, let's say 3 days, but let's say that we're going to do it for 5 days. So I've done a 5-day fast before. I've also done a 6-day fast. I've done a 5-day fast a couple of times. And in fact, I've done a 3-day fast last year. I think I did it 8 times. So let me fix the sound here. So if you are doing day one, so day one of doing a fast, which means that the only thing that you're going to do is you're going to do water and all right, there we go. We're having some technical difficulties. So day one, we're talking about water. We're talking about minerals only. Okay, so water and minerals only, and I'll explain that in just a second. Can you have coffee? Yes. Can you have things like Zevia? Yes. We're not going to be that strict. So the first day that you're withholding any kind of food whatsoever is you're going to primarily start tapping into stored sugar. That's known as glycogen. Where do you store your sugar? You store it in the liver, and you also store it within your muscle cells. Primarily, most of it is stored within the liver. Now, if you look at how much glycogen that you can store within the liver, then basically, depending on what you read, you're looking at about 2,400 to 2,800, maybe 3,000 kilocalories. So basically, glycogen is stored sugar, which is why a lot of people, they can fast for 24 hours and are like, I don't feel all that bad. I actually feel pretty good. And the reason why is you're just tapping into extra stored sugar. So the body can only can only store so much sugar at one time. And that's the first thing that you will start to go through primarily. So that's why the first day of fasting, not that hard. Now, on day two, this is where you can start to go into fatty acid conversion. Once you go through all of your glycogen, you're going to start to go into fatty acid conversion, which means you're going to be breaking down your fat and be using that as an alternate source of energy. That's why they can call it ketosis. Okay. So now this can be easy for people, or this can be very hard, and it depends on if you are fat adapted, meaning can your liver take those fatty acids and convert it into an energy source and water? Okay. A lot of people aren't very good at doing that. So that's when they start to not feel very good. And it's also the time where they can start to give up because they're not feeling so hot. Now, once you get to day three, that's when it can be start getting a little bit easier for some people. But this is also where your body says, hey, you know what? I haven't eaten now in over 48 hours. I am starving. And this is where the whole idea of what's known as autophagy comes in. Well, what on earth, Dr. Nate, is autophagy? And a lot of people who are into fasting will talk about this. Well, remember, this is all about conservation and survival. And so if your body says, you know what, I think I'm going into starvation here, and I haven't eaten now for 48 hours, one of the things that I have to do is I have to start cleaning up cells that are kind of underperforming or kind of on their way out. So it's almost as if the body says, I'm going to do a quick assessment here, and I'm going to assess um, some of the cells that we just need to get rid of because they're underperforming, they're a little bit older, and we just need to do this for the sake of really becoming very efficient. So the whole idea of autophagy is the body just is cleaning up what we would call senescent cells. So that starts to happen at day 3. Now, day 4, here's what people typically say is, wow, I'm starting to feel actually a little bit better. I'm a little bit more fat adapted. My joints don't hurt that much. I've actually lost some weight. And then by day 5, people say, well, you know what? I'm actually feeling pretty good. I'm not super hungry. Hungry is not a huge concern at this point. In fact, a lot of times people will say at day 5, especially if they've done it more than once, they're like, you know what? I thought I was just going to go 5 days, but let's maybe extend this another day or two. Okay. So that's typically what people will do, especially if they're doing a 5-day fast. And so I would actually say that the hardest time doing it is on the first night and then also the second night. And once you've made it through after day 3, it actually becomes a little bit easier. So why does that happen? In fact, one of the other things that people notice is during fasting, as they say, hey, Dr. Nate, at night, I was absolutely wired and I had a really hard time falling asleep. This has actually been the case for me on occasion, is where I'm like, man, I slept like 4 or 5 hours and I feel like that's all that I needed to sleep. Well, one of the reasons why is if you understand a hormone, so it's cortisol. Cortisol gives you that feeling of awake. It's actually what wakes you up in the morning. So if you can wake up without an alarm, what woke you up was the hormone cortisol. Now, cortisol also works in sync with you feeling awake, but it also works in a way in which it helps you to mobilize blood sugar. So if your body's trying to mobilize stored sugar during that time, then that's when you're going to feel a little bit wired. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why, if the body's not very fat adapted, and people who do have some issues with blood sugar, one of the things that they can feel is that, wow, I ate at 6 o'clock, but man, I wake up at 2 in the morning wide awake. And the reason why is the body is trying to mobilize blood sugar, try to mobilize sugar, and then in order to help with low blood sugar. And during that process, too, cortisol also wakes you up. If people are really bad, they're like, yeah, I figured out how to get myself to go back to sleep by eating a bunch of sugar. And then that causes them to go back to sleep. So one of the things and one of the side effects of, yes, fasting, especially if you're not used to it, is that, yes, in fact, you can have some problems falling asleep. On the first night and on the second night, yes, you can, because you can feel a little bit awake and wired. And what's giving you that signal is actually cortisol to try to tap into stored sugar, try to mobilize it. Okay. Now, if you guys can make it through a 5-day fast, remember this, I went over who should and who shouldn't. I probably will get the question of people saying, hey, doc, I'm on blood sugar. I'm on type 2 diabetes medication. I'm on, things like metformin. I may be on insulin. In that case, you really do need to be watching your blood sugar, because I have actually seen people's insulin amounts, if they're that bad of a type 2 diabetic, I've seen it change literally that quickly. So you do need to be monitoring your blood sugar while you're doing that, because even your medication demands can also change. But here's one of the effects of, if you can make it through even a 3-day fast or even a 5-day fast, is that, will you have less inflammation? The answer is yes, systemically. I'll explain to you why that is in just a second. Will you have weight loss? Most likely, yes. I've had people lose 15, 20 pounds doing a 5-day fast. Heck, for some people, even a 3-day fast. And they think, wow, I lost so much weight. I was like, well, it's not fat. It's a lot of inflammation and a lot of water weight. Okay. I want you to think of this. If someone has a lot of gastrointestinal issues, in which they do have what's known as a leaky gut, I know that gets thrown around there, but I also call it gastrointestinal hyperpermeability. the fact that they withdraw all food means that they have stopped all inflammatory process from happening from the GI system, which means that they're going to actually lose a lot of swelling, a lot of water. And the other way they can lose a lot of water too is glycogen also carries water with it. So if you're losing glycogen, you will also lose water. And so if people are, uh, they have a lot of glycogen, they always have a lot of glycogen in their liver and also in their muscle, and they're also very inflamed. They have the potential to lose a lot of their gravitational pull on the scale quite a bit. As people become more better and they're generally less inflamed, and I'll go over that in just a second, then they won't lose quite as much. But I've had some people lose 20 pounds and they thought, man, fasting is like the next best thing, next to sliced bread. And it also can mean some things if you do, in fact, lose a lot of weight. But the other cool thing can it bring about healing? Yes. The whole idea of it actually stimulating the formation of stem cells, within the bone marrow. Yes, absolutely. And that's why when you look at these immature cells that then are formed in the bone marrow, and they can either, form as specific types of white blood cells, they can form as T cells, they can form as, um, uh, B lymphocytes, platelets, all those things are made within the actual bone marrow, where these immature stem cells that can then take on different forms depending on their environment. So yes, can it actually bring healing doing that? The answer is absolutely yes. I think the biggest reason why I like it is to decrease your exposure to the hormone insulin, because you're not eating anything whatsoever. So can it kind of just speed that along as far as in helping to increase insulin sensitivity? My opinion is yes, absolutely, that it can. So here's the question that a lot of people will ask me. They will say, Dr. Nate, why do I feel less inflamed after a fast? Is it because fasting is incredible? Is fasting amazing? And I want you to think about it. Is why do you think that you will feel less inflamed after a fast? And the answer is this: because you took the immune system out of the digestive process. Let me say that again. You took the immune system out of the digestive process. Let me make one thing extremely clear: is the immune system should not be part of the digestive process. And so what causes the immune system to be part of the digestive process? Improperly breaking down your proteins. That has to do with stomach acid. Another thing too is doing things that damage the gastrointestinal barrier. Stress can definitely do it. Certain drugs can actually do it. Antibiotics can do it. Glyphosate can do it. If you've had your gallbladder out, that definitely can do it. It creates a different environment within the intestinal lining. So if you have some gastrointestinal lining uh, barrier issues or malfunction, then that will also cause unbroken down proteins to be able to not go through the intestinal lining, but around it. And if that happens, you're going to have large proteins that the immune system looks at and says, hey, you're a foreign invader. I don't care if it's a virus. I don't care if it's a bacteria. I don't care if it's a toxin. As long as it's a foreign protein, we're going to go after that. And if that foreign protein, the body looks at it, that's a food. It doesn't care at that point if it's kale or if it's broccoli or if it's something very good for you or eggs. It will have what's known as an IgG response to it, a delayed hypersensitivity response. And yes, that can actually cause things like bloating and systemic inflammation and brain fog, especially depending on how many that you have and that you are introducing at one time. So the reason why when people fast is innately they're saying, man, I fast, I feel so much better. But I also ask the question, if you lost a lot of weight and you feel so much better, then obviously you can't fast all the time. Like you can't be fasting, for 5 days and eat for 2. It is at some point there's going to be a zero-sum return on it. So that's why I asked the question, well, if you feel so good with fasting, then maybe you should address what could be happening around the gastrointestinal barrier. Start addressing some issues that you are having with digestion. So I'll give you a perfect example. If you look at this person right here, when we test 154 different foods, and by the way, this is actually immunolaboratories. That's the only thing that they do. This is not something that you get online because in order for this to be a true allergy, all 4 subclasses of an IgG response have to be positive. Some of these tests, they only test for one subclass and that's it, which is why you look at it and you're way more confused than even before you got the test. One of them is actually called Everlywell. Okay. Someone comes to me, they got an Everlywell. I say, do it again and do it this one. So if you look at this person, you can see that they're reacting to 33 different foods. So this person obviously has a problem breaking down their foods, which can be happening at the stomach, can be happening at the pancreas, can be also happening at the gallbladder. But then also they tend to be leaking a lot of foods through their gastrointestinal barrier. So barrier function is severely diminished. That's going to cause an inflammatory response around the gastrointestinal barrier. You can even measure that on a stool test. So if this person, then probably if they would stop eating for 3 days or 5 days, would probably feel a whole heck of a lot better. But they can also feel a whole heck of a lot better by doing a couple things. Number one, avoiding the foods, but then also fixing the reason why they developed 33 food allergies in the first place, which obviously they would need to be working on digestion, which is going back to, hey, start digestion here in your mouth. Start it with chewing your food. Start with seeing the food. Start with smelling the food. That's actually when digestion starts. That's when it actually gets you into rest and digest. So see the food, smell the food, start to chew the food. Eat in a relaxed state, not stressed. Eat sitting down, not on the go. Those things don't cost you anything. But this is why when people say, oh, I have apple cider vinegar, all you're doing is putting more acid into your stomach, especially if you tend to be low in stomach acid, because again, that's helping you to break your proteins down. Sometimes people even need a stronger acid like betaine, hydrochloric acid. Some people have needed so much stomach acid that they've had to take literally 15 betaine hydrochloric acids that we give to them just in order for it to burn a little bit within their stomach, which means they're very, very deficient in stomach acid, which means that by giving them hydrochloric acid, we're trying to lower the pH within that environment, because that's what helps you to break down your proteins. And it's also what helps you to sterilize your food, i.e. you don't catch a parasite as much as you allow a parasite in that you ingest that is not killed off with sufficient stomach acid. So that's one of the first things. And then doing things in order to help with barrier function can help quite a bit. There's a lot of different things that you can do as well. But this is how, when people say, I love fasting, I always ask the question, well, why do you need to fast? Why do you need to fast all the time? And it's like, I just feel better. I'm saying, well, you could address it by actually looking at an IgG and an IgE food allergy test, and then fixing the reason why the foods that you are eating are inflaming you in the first place. So someone actually asked the question, hey, just water for all 5 days. Well, here's one of the things that you can do. If you are doing, let's say, a 5-day fast, and am I telling you that you should do a 5-day fast? No, this is just for general advice. But here's how you would do an extended fast. Let's just say that it was going to be for 3 days. An easy way that you can do this is to start your fast after your evening meal. Okay. So start your fast after your evening meal. So let's say it's a Sunday and you eat dinner on Sunday at 6 o'clock and you're done eating at 6:45. Well, then right then and there, that's when your fast starts. So if you're going to do it for a 3-day fast, then you basically are going to bed on that first night, not really starting the fast. But you then start, when you wake up, you skip breakfast, you skip lunch, you're going to skip dinner. So by Monday evening, you're into 24 hours already. So then by Wednesday, you break the fast at 6 o'clock, then you have effectively done a 72-hour fast. So that's why I always say you should start the fast in the evening after your last meal, because you're actually going to bed full. So start it after your evening meal. I've started a fast on actually Saturday night and gone all the way until Friday night. So I did a 6-day fast doing that. Number 2, you want to make sure that you are in fact drinking water. General rule, drink half of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 200 pounds, make sure you're getting 100 ounces. I do recommend, though, that some people do in fact need to get some minerals in, especially if you're going to be going longer than 3 days. And just look at what your RDA of your minerals are. You need 4,000 approximately milligrams of potassium. You need about a teaspoon of sea salt, which is going to be about 2,500 to 3,000 milligrams, and 300 to 400 milligrams of potassium. And you can actually just add that to water. I actually take potassium pills when I do it. I add some sea salt to water, and I'll actually put some what's known as relax, which is just some powdered magnesium citrate, and I'll add that to the water, and it's flavored. And so for me, I'll drink about 120 ounces of water, but then I'll also add minerals. I do make sure that I get minerals only because I will work out during the fast. So I've worked out 4 days fasted, 5 days fasted. I didn't set any records. I didn't set any PR. I knew that a PR. I knew that I wouldn't. But it's just like, I just want to see how I feel trying to do high intensity exercise during this. And yes, it's very, very difficult because you really don't have any of the sugar that's going to fuel the intensity of that workout. So that's what you do every single day. I know that some people will say, wow, 4,000 milligrams of potassium, that's just, that's way too much. Guys, that's your RDA. And that's what's needed for your nerve system to be able to function. And I've always wondered why a doctor would tell someone, because they're on a blood pressure medication, why not to get just the RDA of what you need in order for normal body function to take place? Because you can run into some problems being very low in potassium. And the people who are running, they say don't have potassium. Usually it's because of the medication that's actually causing some of the potassium sparing. So it's like they're saying, don't, it would be like saying, watch your potassium. Okay, don't have avocados, don't have a baked potato, don't have a banana, don't eat any kind of liver because that contains potassium. It's like saying don't eat any veggies. You do need those things, and your nerve system does require it. And most of your potassium is stored within the cell, not within the blood. Okay. So make sure that you're getting that throughout the whole 3 days or 5 days. Make sure you're getting enough water. And yes, 3 days, I've actually done no minerals before, but for 5 days, I definitely have. Now, what happens though if you are going to break the fast? Okay. Well, one of the things that I tell people is well, if your stomach, if your pancreas, the gallbladder really hasn't needed to do anything at that point, well, it's going to be a little bit sluggish. So if you're doing like a 3-day fast, usually what we say when you break it for the first time is just steam some veggies and start by doing that. Okay. Because if you haven't eaten for 3 days, and I've had some people who didn't listen to me that did it, and they're like, oh yeah, I had a 12-ounce ribeye. And I said, how'd you do? And they're like, I was on the toilet for the whole night. Okay. So breaking the fast, then usually the best thing to do is just to have some steamed veggies, very easy to digest. You can add in some apple cider vinegar. You can add in some pancreatic enzymes in order to help with breaking down the food. Steamed veggies. And yes, I have actually have tried 3 ounces of meat after 3 days, a little bit. And you can get away with that if you're adding some pancreatic enzymes in order to, and some apple cider vinegar to help break down the proteins and to help break down the fat a little bit better. And if you do a 5-day fast, I would say their first meal, just be careful, just do some steamed veggies. And then the next day, start adding back your food in a little bit more at a time. And then I wouldn't add in any meat by doing more than 3 ounces at a time, because if you do more than that, you're going to notice it in your gastrointestinal system pretty quickly. So guys, it's not like super, super hard. It's not necessarily super complicated. I know that we try to make it more complicated than when it needs to be, but it doesn't have to be that hard. Okay. So this is kind of some blood work that you can look at and say, hey, would fasting really benefit me or not? Okay. The first one that I would say is when we look at A1C, we actually want to see A1C down below 5.4. So 5.3 and below, then we're people who are that, we would say, hey, you don't need to fast. So is your A1C above 5.3, then yes, fasting would probably benefit you from doing that. There's even research, I think from the Journal of Neurology, I think it's 2005, that actually says that if your A1C is 5.4 and above, you will see an increase in brain atrophy the higher that it goes. So every year you'll see some brain atrophy as people age, and it just gets a lot more accelerated if your A1C is above, as it goes above 5.4. Insulin, where we like to see insulin at, is 3 to 5 international units per milliliter. Most people that we test their insulin, they're sitting around 10 to 20. Doctors really aren't measuring your insulin. So guys, even if you see elevated insulin at 20, but you still see that your blood sugars are within a normal range, just remember this: you need more and more insulin in order to keep your blood sugar stable. So at some point, the dam is going to break, and you're going to see that you're going to become less and less sensitive to insulin. There's only so much that the pancreas can keep up with, and that's when you start losing it. And as far as your average blood sugars, and you start seeing your A1C go a little bit higher. High sensitivity C-reactive protein, we like to see that under 1. I'll probably even next week maybe go over this, but there just actually came out with an article out of the Lancet just about a week ago. And they looked at people on cholesterol medication, on aggressive statin therapy to lower their cholesterol. And then the researcher looked at this and said, well, wait a second, we still see a level of mortality, even when we're lowering cholesterol, even down to a certain point. And the biggest difference between the two is these people were still inflamed. And we saw that if they had elevated levels of C-reactive protein and their cholesterol were where we wanted them to be, they were still dying off faster than people who had a lower C-reactive protein. And the researcher, it was a medical doctor, looked at this and said, hey, doctors, if you're not measuring high sensitivity C-reactive protein, then you are doing a massive disservice to your patient. And so his solution wasn't to actually start finding the causes of the inflammatory response. His solution was people need to go on just more anti-inflammatories. Well, we've systematically been able to lower people's high sensitivity C-reactive protein. Why? We get to the reason why that it's happening, and there's numerous reasons why people would have an elevated C-reactive protein. And in my opinion, that the inflammation is actually what causes the LDL to stick to the arterial wall, because it's the inflammation that produces the damage, and it's the cholesterol that then is there to try to repair some of the damage. It's an immune response. Triglycerides should be under 100. We like to see triglycerides in the double digits. And then also, guys, ferritin can be a great marker in order to see if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or even fatty liver disease of any kind. If your ferritin, we see it over 300, we're assuming that you do, in fact, have a fatty liver. And so that's why as the liver can actually bind a lot more iron as it becomes more and more inflamed. So if you're looking at A1C over 5, 5.4 and above, if you're looking at insulin over 5, if you're looking at your triglycerides going in the triple digits, especially guys, if you're seeing that your ferritin levels are over 300, then can fasting benefit you? Yes, the answer is yes. It's something that you should look into and talk within your doctor. Okay. Now, the biggest thing that I would tell you guys is this is why fasting is just a tool. And I don't tie our whole, online persona from fasting, so it's just a tool. Do we use it? Yeah, we actually use it quite a bit. Do we use it all the time? No, because fasting is a tool that can help people in some situations. And it's also sometimes I said, no, this isn't something that I necessarily would want to do, nor do you need to do. But I just want you to remember this, guys, is if you are still suffering from a health condition and it's been chronic for years and years and years, the reason why we get the clinical success that we do is because we don't think of your illness as an illness, because once you start looking at it as an illness, it takes away all of your hope. What we look at, especially when we talk about chronic degenerative disease, we're talking about that maybe your illness is an injury. Maybe your illness is an injury. And that should be really, really good news, because if you look at this right here and you can see that this person has a scab, well, if they fall down and they hurt their knee, and they don't keep falling down on it again, well, within 3 to 4 weeks, you're actually going to see that the scab heals, it sloughs off, and you're going to see brand new skin underneath. That's a healing principle. And so why is it any different in other parts of the body? Yes, the skin does heal a little bit quicker than other parts of the body, but the principle is the same. If the body can heal a scab, then why on earth is it not healing your type 2 diabetes? Or why is it not healing your arteries? Or why is it not healing your allergies? Why is it not healing your gastrointestinal issues? Why is it not healing your hormone issues? And maybe the reason why those things aren't getting healed is because, like this scab, you just keep falling down on it every single day. And if you kept falling down on it every single day, then you'd be like, gosh, this scab isn't healing. Maybe I should go to my doctor and try to figure out why it's not healing. No, you already know the reason why is because you keep falling down on it. And if you had a scab that wasn't healing because you kept falling down on it, you wouldn't go to the doctor and be like, doctor, can you please figure out why the scab isn't healing? And the doctor looks at it and examines it and says, yes. And the reason why the scab isn't healing because you develop a case of chronic genu knee scabitis, and you're going to need, a lifelong of certain knee scabitis medications, probably to lower the inflammatory response, give some things in order for it. And you'll probably have this for the rest of your life. And the good news is, though, it's manageable. The doctor should say, well, why do you keep falling on it? Maybe we should just figure out why you're not falling on it. And that's what we do here in this office. And if someone comes in, they have a chronic injury, we figure out why is it chronic and where has it been that you keep injuring it? Because if you can remove what's injuring it and help to support the body already knows how to heal, guys. And this is why we're able to help people be able to get off of medications. It's not even my job to help them off, but they get to the point where they don't need them. Their medical doctor says you don't need to be on these medications anymore. And so the reason why is because you find the cause, the body is able to heal on its own. And this is why, guys, if you're not addressing inflammation first and foremost, then whatever supplements that you're trying to take or whatever you're trying to do in your natural health journey, if you're not addressing inflammation first and foremost, that would be like you keep falling on your scab and then taking the very best in, scab support every single day. So the first thing that you have to address is what on earth is causing it. And that's why the inflammation talk, especially if you guys are watching from the Chicagoland area, please come to the inflammation talk because it will make so much sense as far as this is what I need to start to handle and address first. A lot of when we look at inflammation, we actually call acute inflammation bad and we ignore chronic inflammation. Most of what medical doctors do when it comes to inflammation is to either suppress chronic inflammation, i.e. try to figure out the reason why it's happening in the first place, or give you a drug to actually manage the effects of the inflammation, i.e. things like high blood pressure and things like that. But if you truly understand inflammation, it's not that you should suppress acute inflammation, it's should you actually find the sources of the chronic inflammation so that the immune system doesn't have to always respond and to adapt in a way that, yes, will help you live longer, but will also ultimately lead to your death. So when you talk about weight loss, cancer, you talk about type 2 diabetes, thyroid disease, autoimmune disease, hormone imbalance, whatever it might be, there is a chronic inflammatory reaction that's taking place that the body is desperately trying to heal, but with a secondary consequence of other things happening as a result. So this is an in-person event. If you are from the Chicagoland area, all you have to go to, especially if you're watching on Facebook, is you can go up to the top of the page. You'll see that it's linked at the top of the page on Facebook, and you'll see the link to the inflammation talk. I believe that our next one is going to be April 4th, I believe. I believe that's on a Wednesday or Thursday. So make sure that you get registered for that as well. And right now, we currently don't have it online only because with our schedule, we are just unable to be able to see people remotely. But if you are watching and you want to work with the Wellness Way doctor, please go to thewellnessway.com. That's thewellnessway.com and find a Wellness Way doctor that's close to you because our schedule is actually really full with just people in the area. And I love that. And I know a lot of people reach out saying, hey, can you help me? But please go to thewellnessway.com. See if you can find an office that's close to you. I believe there's 60 offices in the continental United States. But if you can't, please reach out and they can find you a doctor who can work with you remotely. And so even if you're not close, they have the ability to be able to work through either Zoom or through phone calls, be able to order the tests that you need and go to a local lab and get, the things that you need or drop shift certain things. But people reach out to me all the time. I'm like, just please go to thewellnessway.com and see if you can reach out to a doctor who can work with you very specifically. So, but if you're from the Chicagoland area, go to the top, get registered for the next inflammation talk. I believe that's Thursday, April 4th at 6:00 p.m. Can't wait to see you guys there. Next week, I'll be bringing a brand new topic. Thank you guys very much, as always, for watching. I apologize if a little bit scattered. We were having some technical issues on our end, and also because I've been speaking for 10 hours straight. So sometimes I do suffer from a little bit of brain fog. So guys, be well, be blessed. Please share this video with other people. I sincerely appreciate all the likes, all the shares, all your comments. And I do read almost all of them, including the ones that come from trolls as well. I just don't respond. So guys, be well, be blessed. We'll talk to you guys.